Okay, I'm starting now.
Hi, everyone. Let's just give it a couple of minutes before we start.
Pratusha has started. We'll have to mute everyone else.
A very good morning to one and all. I'm Pratyusha Meda, Secretary of the ICAI DC chapter. It is my immense pleasure to welcome you all to our ICAI DC chapter's webinar on how technology is shaping the future of trade finance. I'm excited to introduce our panel for the day. We welcome CA Pankaj Mundra, co-founder 360TF, and Mr. Vikram Lodha, co-founder and CEO 360TF to our chapter. We look forward to hearing your webinar today. On behalf of the ICAI DC chapter, I welcome our chief guest, Yaduvendra Mathurji. Mathurji served our country as the officer of the Indian Administrative Service. Previously, he was the Secretary to Government of India, Niti Aayog. Additionally, he is the former CMD of Exim Bank. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation on such a short notice. With the deepest of gratitude, we welcome you, sir. Now I invite my colleague, the chair of the ICAI DC chapter, Gokul, to say a few words.
Thank you, Pratusha. I'll not take too long. Thanks everyone for joining. Good morning in DC and good evening to audience in India. Many thanks for joining. Many thanks to Yaduvendra Mathur, our chief guest today, for joining us at a very short notice. And thanks to our speakers, CA Pankaj and Vikram Lodha and team from 360TF. Just to give a brief about Washington DC chapter, we were formally inaugurated in February 2021. And today we are a very strong community of 100 plus chartered accountants. So this is serving as a platform for professional and personal development of members, chartered accountants in and around DC area. But another objective of all international chapters has been to enhance India's economic engagement with the various foreign jurisdictions. So coming to today's topic, while COVID-19 has surely put a brake on our economic growth, we should not lose our focus on realizing government's vision of making India a $5 trillion economy. And to achieve this, we need to see a very high growth rate in next 4 years and even higher growth rate in exports. And this can happen only if global trade flourishes. And so it is very important that we support trade financing requirement of especially export-oriented small and medium enterprises, so that they can get access to markets, global markets, and boost our country's international trade. So what is needed today is innovations in financial sector, and technology will play a big role in connecting traders and financiers. And today's session could not have come at a better time when we need this the most. So at Washington DC chapter, we are very happy to host this very important event. We usually at this chapter, we keep our events open to larger global audience because we try to provide a good platform so that experts from various countries and regions and interested audience can come together and share their views and experience. So for today's event, we have received some very good response and there's a lot of interesting questions sent at the time of registration. So our speakers will be addressing them in this session. So finally, one disclaimer is that this session is for educational purpose. So ICAI Washington DC chapter nor ICAHQ does not endorse any product, service, or anything discussed for demonstration purpose. So I'll end it here. I'll hand it over to our CA Kalpeshji, who is a very senior chartered accountant in our chapter and who is heading our international external affairs, relationships, and our interactions with other chapters and members, and who took initiative to organize today's section. Over to you, Kalpeshji. You are muted.
Oh, Very good. Thank you very much, Gokul, for probably excellent opening remarks. I think probably that absolutely shows what is our profile and where we stand. The locational advantage of our chapter is important because we are one of the chapters of the world capital of world capital, or the capital of the world. You can mention that, and that is the reason that we are really trying to prove ourselves to be the leaders everywhere, including our institute. We are definitely aiming as the flagship profession of the world in the global level. So I was just very excited when I saw one of these particular mention about Pankaj on our one of the WhatsApp on, and I said, oh, this is something it really needs, because like what you see, that the finance is something which is like a blood which runs in your body. If there is no finance, there is no economy. There is no, you cannot think about finance with, economy without finance. And I feel that, this particular, the awareness about the finance and obtaining finance, because you obtain finance in various ways, like you borrow, you raise capital, you get gifts or everything, whatever it is. But borrowing is one of the fastest route and probably more commercial uh, angle of that. So what I feel is like, unlike in traditionally in an old age, when you used to go and borrow locally from the financier and in your own village or in city, it was just the honesty of the word of mouth that would probably give you finance. But today that is not the case, because if you get a finance only word of mouth, I think probably the lender will have to search the borrower all over the world. So that is the real sense. And here the finance is required, and how to really improve the trade is what we are going to listen. We are very excited. And as rightly said by Gokul, said that the innovation of this technology of getting this particular currency in the shape of virtual currencies, and what we are also looking out for all those new currencies which are already there, and they are really taking a very important position in the financial world. So with these all words, and I would end up with thanking Mr. Mathur to be with us, and probably we'll have some piece of advice and wisdom from him as well. So we would really be excited, not letting this particular time to be at my instance, but I want to be more with you guys and here, lend my ears more than my speech. So I would hand over the speech back to Pratyusha to take over this particular session and move forward. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate all of you, the panel and Sir Mathur sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kalpesh Ji, for your kind message. You are the backbone of ICIDC.
Nice.
Yadavendra Mathur Ji, a development finance professional who is presently Vice Chairman Consulting Engineers Group, a leading infrastructure consulting services company. With nearly 4 decades experience in public administration, Multilateral Development Bank, which is the African Development Bank, Export-Import Bank of India, he led the knowledge and innovation hub of Prime Minister Modi's think tank, the National Institution for Transformation, India, the Niti Aayog. With this note, I invite our chief guest, Yadavendra Mathur Ji, to address our gathering today.
Good morning, good evening. Thank you, Pratyusha. Thank you, Mr. Kalpesh. Thank you, Gokul Pai, the Washington, D.C. chapter president. And I really am delighted to be here, and I have to really appreciate my good friend Pankaj Mundra, whom I've known for nearly 2 decades now, for bringing me upfront to the institute's very thoroughly professionally organized events in Dubai. A couple of years ago, five years ago, I think I was in Dubai speaking on the invitation of Mr. Mundra to the whole group of chartered accountants in Dubai. The Institute of Chartered Accountants educational outreach through such events is fantastic. Earlier today morning, I was talking to my colleague, the Joint Secretary, Mr. Singhvi Mahavir. So I was asking Mahavir about his, what's going on, because I've known Mr. Mahavir for many years. He's a civil servant like me, and we have exchanged many notes many a time. He's He's working on a very critical function as joint secretary. And what really came across was the massive outreach and the kind of contribution that the Institute of Chartered Accountants is already making globally by virtue of engaging more proactively with the Indian missions. And I noted that apart from San Francisco, now across the United States, we have the Institute of Chartered Accountants, distinguished members getting together. And this is fantastic, not only for their own private professional growth, but also as the whole Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the ethos of our proud nation to reach out. And I think there is no better way to reach out than through effective, sustainable trade finance. And I come straight to the issue of technology and where we are poised. Having been with the Niti Aayog, we were driving the Aadhaar, the unique identity numbers had started by the erstwhile Planning Commission. So we are well aware of how India's rapid movement on the unique identity number, then the bank accounts with the telephone, so the mobile outreach, the bank accounts and the unique number, that gave a massive structure, what we call the India stack, on which the fintech revolution rolled out. And then came the whole ecosystem is very well primed for unleashing the power of fintech. And within fintech, the trade finance is where I think a lot of action has already started. During the course of this evening, I'm sure Vikram and Pankaj will take us through that. But I'd only like to say that at the highest level, and the Prime Minister has been very closely driving the fintech rollout, and it is driven by the ethos of technology for all. So I think where we really bring in a differentiation in India is, for us, the use of technology should upfront, or the case studies should demonstrate that it is addressing the farmer, the disadvantaged. So I think our national AI strategy, if you have a chance, do look at that, is AI for all. So while we can talk about blockchain and the whole distributed ledger and what's happening, exciting things have been happening. And with Gary Gensler, who taught who taught Bitcoin, who taught the whole at MIT, very, very prestigious course Gary Gensler would lead at MIT on blockchains and use cases. And I think with him becoming chairman of the SEC, we are poised to really unleash a new era. And with the distributed ledger platforms, whether it is private blockchains or public blockchains, and whether Corda and whether Corda will continue, even Finacle, I think our Finacle platform is robust. And now these 15, 16 banks, very recently, just a week ago, that companies got set up. And we have, real great startups. I'm very proud to be associated with one of them. And I think Pankaj and Vikram would tell us about that. But the point is, it's not one, it's about a whole ecosystem being built up around trade finance. And that is where I think the rubber will hit the road running. And that's where chartered accountants would play a very key role, because you have the challenges of regulatory oversights, money laundering, and the whole ecosystem which is forcing banks to put in more capital. And capital for banks for trade finance is really stressed. And with the global trade finance requiring about $15 to $17 trillion worth of trade finance is required. And you have, that's the kind of value of stuff which is on the high seas, so to say. And we're talking of physical goods. We're not talking of financing, invisibles, but actual stuff which is on the high seas or in the air needs to be financed. And like Mr. Kalpesh was just now mentioning, that this is going to be the real bottleneck, particularly for the developing world, Africa, parts of Asia, even our economy. We really need to work around making the transaction costs, even the availability of finance itself for the SMEs. So while the letters of credit and other traditional instruments, their percentage of the whole global trade is coming down, and now you have more and more happening on the open account with big multinationals moving in, where the trust and you can trade on the open account where you don't need documentation, and the whole that ecosystem is kind of shrunk. Earlier it was maybe 20 years ago, maybe more than 50% was LCs and other documents, and on the open account was lesser. But now the challenges of fraud and data asymmetry, I think that and the regulatory kickback has pushed availability of trade finance down to a tight corner. Large banks actually kind of vacated the space, and many developing countries suffered. And now with the pandemic and with global trade picking up, which has to drive global economies, I think our national efforts in India to really ramp up trade, particularly through export zones and focus on SMEs, the timing couldn't be better for technology to come in and fill in the gaps. I'm very excited being a part of what's happening on trade finance. Though as a professional now, I'm spending more time financing project finance and project exports around, that's which is more lumpy, and it needs long-term capital. But the pre-shipment credits and and the facilitation of global relationships through very easy systems is where massive opportunities are there. And you guys sitting in the Washington chapter, right at the heart where policy is made, and you with the SEC and with, I think, the changes happening, even with the professionals getting exposed to systems. We also in India, the Chartered Accountant Institute is now is building up very robust linkages, and the mutual MRAs are being signed. We do hope there is greater activity around the chapters, and all at least 100 cities around the world should have a chapter. That's what I think the vision is of many people in the institute. This is what Mahavir Singhvi was telling me. But I think you know far better where what's going on really. And as a policy person sitting a little on the margins, I'm also excited to listen to you and to your questions. And thank you for the honor you have given me. I really didn't deserve it, but Pankaj and I think Gokul and Vikram, you've been very kind. Thank you, Mr. Kalpesh, for setting it up. I'll be here right till the end of the seminar and the webinar. So once again, thank you and have a great evening today.
Sir, we are already 44 numbered. So we are not too far away from the 100 target. And so we want to make every chapter of the entire USA. So 48 chapters, at least we would definitely envisage itself in USA. So with global presence, we are definitely not very far to reach 100 numbers also. Just to interrupt and register.
I'm told there are 50,000 chartered accountants outside India.
Yes. And we were surprised to have them so much in that itself. In USA, you will find more than 12 to 15,000 chartered accountants already connected to each other now. And we are so probably interwoven it. And we are trying to really have a nodal chapter, which is going to be a representative office in USA for ICAI. So which will be probably monitoring and mentor And so we'll have one ICAI USA chapter, which is going to really be in charge of all these particular chapters and everything. So we have a very big vision, like what you really said, and we want to definitely march towards and want to really be the flagship profession of the world. And we want that acceptance coming from AICPA also. We are really working hard to knock the doors, and we want to see that they respect us. I mean, I mentioned again in my inauguration that I refused to take an exam of CPA because I am a chartered accountant, and that was my absolutely put down resistance, and I was awarded certificate without appearing for the CPA examination. So that is the zeal we are possessing right now, and we want to impress upon these people that chartered accountants, you cannot do without them. The whole world has to really look forward to us. Sorry for interrupting, taking 1 minute, but I just wanted to give you an update about this. Sorry, Pratyusha, thanks a lot for holding for me, but I just wanted to, honor his requirements. So that's it.
Thank you, Mathur sir. It was very good to hear you, mention the achievements of ICAI in line with Prime Minister Modi's mission, and your experience with Niti Aayog and how fintech has emerged was very enlightening, sir. Your mention on artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the various happenings was very informative. And your association and experience with the startups is something that we have noted, sir. Thank you so much for your kind message, sir. Technology and digitization are now our daily companions in all walks of life. Trade, an industry as old as civilization itself and largely defined by set traditions and regulations, has also embraced this new reality. How can trade finance be too far behind then? During this session on how technology is shaping the future of trade finance, we shall explore the various angles, including how the global trade finance has shaped up so far and in volume, trade finance to optimize working capital management, issues and solutions in trade finance, exporters and defaulters, what are the reasons for change, what are the technologies disrupting the industry, business opportunities for US banks, risk management for US exporters. All this will be covered. Pankaj Mundra is a 2002 batch chartered accountant with 20 plus years of banking experience in the fields of strategy, trade finance, debt syndication, restructuring, investment advisory in the Middle East, Asia and Africa region. Pankaj has served as one of the youngest chair of the Dubai chapter of ICAI from 2016-17 and has served as the deputy chairperson of International Trade and Forfeiting Association, AMENA Committee. He is a passionate speaker and has addressed several of our sister ICAI overseas chapters. Vikram Lodha, an all-rounder career banker, Vikram Lodha comes with extensive experience in wholesale banking. In his previous role, he held the trade product and supply chain finance business for Kotak Mahindra Bank in India. Vikram has demonstrated track record of creating positive business impact by building new revenue streams and leapfrogging growth in every initiative he has undertaken. Vikram is passionate about technology and continuously strives to digitize trade finance. Academically, he is a graduate in commerce and postgraduate in management. With immense pleasure, we welcome tech enthusiasts and innovators Pankaj Mundra and Vikram Lodha of 360TF to shed some light on them. We hope to have an engaging and enlightening session. Before we move on to the session, I have a small couple of announcements to make. Miluni, can you please share the screen? San Francisco chapter of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is presenting SPAC, the latest trends in fundraising. And this event is happening right after the event, which is at 12 noon today. Please try to join that. And we also have San Francisco chapter of the ICAI in collaboration with British Columbia chapter of ICAI and Toronto chapter of ICAI is conducting our International Yoga Day event on Sunday, June 20th, 2021. So please try and join for that too. Over to you guys, Pankaj and Vikram.
Thank you, Pratusha, and thank you, Kalpesh ji, Gokul, for this wonderful introduction and hosting all of us. We are quite delighted to share our knowledge and wisdom of global trade finance with all of you who have joined across US, Middle East, and India. While Vikram will put together or share the screen on the presentation, I'm happy to share that while we've been being a career banker and started my the career in UAE with ABN AMRO Bank and then with Mashreq Bank on the FI and trade finance. Trade finance and the bank risk is very dear to me, and we are quite delighted with this innovation of 360 TF which we're putting together under the umbrella of NMI. We have been got this opportunity among all 42 chapters, as Kalpesh Bhai have shared, to start with from the right from the world capital, Washington DC, to share our what is there on the table. So we are quite delighted to share what's happening across international trade finance through technology. I remain grateful for this wonderful opportunity, and it's Almighty who has kept us healthy and fit during last 15 months, and we remain all of us remain grateful that today we all are together here on this call. I remain grateful to my parents. I started my humble beginning from a small district, Ajmer and Bhawar from Rajasthan, and we are delighted from Bhawar to Mumbai, Mumbai to Dubai, and now to Washington, talking to all of you. And that's all credit goes to our parents. I remain again grateful to Kalpeji and the Washington chapter to host it this evening, and of course my partners, Captain Sunil and Mr. who have helped me to build the NIMAI M360 TF together, along with my team, Benita, Himakshi, and of course Vikram. You're going to listen. So we remain really, as they say, we always learn this, and I always start this my chapter journey with this slide that as we all know, the gratitude is the mother of all virtues. So I'm really thankful to all of you to being patientful and joining this Saturday evening in UAE and India and in morning in Washington. So moving forward, talking about global trade finance, which is been a large industry with a volume of almost close to $20 trillion of trade happening across the globe, and being US being major, contributing to this global trade finance. So it's very, very interesting, be it both with open account and under letter of credit. So I will request my co-founder and CEO, Vikram Lodha, to take this session of global trade finance and take this webinar forward. And of course, I will again chip in back as we move on to the agenda. Vikram, over to you.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thanks for opening this session and giving a brief. Once again, from my side as well, thanks to Kalpesh Bhai for initiating this, Gokul, Pratyusha, Meloni to kind of putting it together, and thanks to Edu sir for kind of accepting our invitation and being here. And thanks to all the participants who are there on the call right now and being with us. And we hope to have your company throughout the session. As we move ahead, we look at what we are trying to kind of put together, or what we have put together today, is something that is somewhere impacting us, already has started impacting us, will continue to impact us more. But we see where are we together in terms of the global trade volumes, the global trade activities which are happening on the technology front, and what is the way forward for these technologies as we move ahead. So just to put a few numbers together, where are we? We are talking about a global trade flow of around 18 to 19 trillion dollar. Okay, that's the overall global flow that we see, and within that, we see that the entire pandemic, which we've seen over the last 1 year, did see a significant dip on the volumes. The volumes were spoken of anything between 13 to 20%, a shave off on the overall global volumes. But we see a sharp resurgence on the we saw sharp resurgence on the volumes come December 2020 onwards. So our sense is the volumes will be put together again this year and will be on the growth trajectory. The BCG report suggests that we will be, as a community, as a globe, we'll be crossing $25 trillion plus volumes over the next 5 to 6 years. That's a big number to have, and to support that kind of number and to support that kind of global flows, one needs to have sufficient backup on the trade financing side. So that's where we are going to look at. We already see some uptick on the marine and cargo insurance numbers, the way premiums are being collected today, and what are the numbers on that side. Right. We look at what is happening in the overall open account trade transactions. Now, this is where the risk is underwritten on the corporate. And while we are speaking of this space, I must tell you, predominantly the space is being covered by banks globally, where banks are underwriting the risk. But there's a sharp, I would say, indulgence or emergence of fintechs in this space, and with all kind of technologies, people are making an inroad, technologies which are helping. And during the course of our session, we'll be addressing or trying to address some of the Q&A questions which were already shared with us. On the technology front, there are companies who are working extensively on, especially on the open account front, where they're trying to collate data. And this is another, this is an example of blockchain as a technology, wherein people are trying to collate data and do a credit assessment of the entire process, tracking of the entire trade flow, right from origination of goods, origination of funds, to the destination of funds. Everything is being tracked, goods are being tracked. Now, traditionally, if you look at what banks always wanted is, to ensure what is the end usage of the money. Where is the money finally going to be used at? Now, there's no better example than trade to do so. You are able to track the goods, you are able to track the funds, and the visibility is far, far greater than what it was, till some time back. And all this is getting augmented by technology. Just to give you an example, and I go back to India in terms of this example, the entire now today the supply chain companies are taking data from GST, are taking data from e-way bills, and they are tracking the invoicing of goods, they're tracking the origination of goods and movement of goods. Everything is getting tracked, and this data is now being furnished to the financiers to take cue from it and do better financing and take far better informed decisions on the overall financing bit. We look at the overall, when we look at the overall trade finance umbrella, and we put it together amongst all the credit products that we can think of, uh, including the treasury products. Some of the treasury products that we look at: loans, long term, short term, bonds, treasury, everything. Trade finance is one product area that stacks, that's the lowest in terms of non performing assets and the defaults that we see globally, right? Now, this is something that's been demonstrated over a long, long period in time, and hence the entire bank-to-bank risk is something that is being favored even today by banks significantly. There is a lot of work being done by the banking industry on that side to augment more and more business. From a fintech perspective, if you look at, a lot of companies are making their contribution in terms of simplifying the banking processes, the entire operational aspects, the regulatory aspects, the underlying documents, how they have been read and understood today. All that work is being done. We talk about one such roadmap, one journey defined by ICC as we move ahead in the presentation. But the whole idea is to use technology and reduce the rejection rate, reduce the turnaround times, improve efficiency, and reduce the defaults by increasing visibility and tracking of documents and flows. So as we look at the LC flows, the export LCs, as we look at, is one of the lowest, is a product with the lowest default rate across all product categories in the world, with a default rate of 0.03%. Uh, it's like closer to achieving 4 sigma on the scale. That's the kind of number. And if you look at from a transaction perspective, 2.7 million transactions and 217 transactions have gone bad out of 2.7 million transactions. That's quite phenomenal from a number perspective as we look at the entire gamut
And
of
just
activity that's been taken up. Yeah, Pankaj.
And just to add on, friends over here, that very, very interesting from a bank's perspective, that today within bank, you have a asset class of retail, which is credit card, personal loans, you have corporate banking, SME loans, and project finance, and so on and so forth. This is an asset class within bank, which has got the lowest default rate as Vikram just shared. And from a ROI perspective, ROE perspective from the bank, as I was talking to two or three, in fact, three CFOs of the bank today afternoon, the FI, the trade finance under, under letter of credit business, in producing a ROE of double is between 10 to 15%. And is in most of the cases in this with the bank is the highest ROE compared to all the verticals of the bank. So that sort of business which you're producing within bank between retail and corporate banking, where your risks are minimal, these are short-term assets. This is a fantastic opportunity for the bank as we speak further, where deploy a short-term liquidity in the asset class of trade finance under letter of credit, which is giving you maximized ROE with the lowest default rate. So this is very, very interesting for a consultant who are either a statutory auditor of the bank or internal audit, or to the consultant, that how bank can further increase their ROE, their market share, their trade asset class by growing further their trade finance book. Yeah, thanks, Vikram. Back to you.
Thank you. This is also because some of you may be aware under the new guidelines also IFRS, the risk weight on the banks is 0.2% as compared to 100% on it's like 20% as compared to 100% on corporate side. That's you know capital accredited. I will just move this. Sorry. Okay. Now this is when we look at the overall you know pain points in the trade finance, and we hear various voices, whether it's a voice of the customer or voice of the bank, and there are various studies being done. But when we look at a higher level, we just look at what are the core areas that needs immediate attention. From the corporate side, if you look at the corporate say that the process is still complex and the turnaround times are high. It is paper intensive, manual processing, connectivity between parties is limited, and this is one of the areas that we have picked up on our franchise side, on our business side. We are addressing the connectivity solution. We're bringing a connectivity platform. Lack of one-stop solution. Now, this is again this is more of a requirement from the corporate side, wherein the corporate saying it is not a pain point, right? While we hear a lot of noise about it that we should create a one-stop solution. On the corporate side and B2B segments, people are not looking at a one-stop solution. They're ready to indulge in multiple solutions so long as they are efficient and technologically advanced. Limited access to credit. And these are certain aspects that have been derived from various studies as we look at. Now, when we move further on this, we see what are the areas that are really kind of holding the banks back. Okay, and this is only increased over the period in time where banks have really become cautious about a lot of things. When I was in the banking world, we used to call the banks are being run by CARL nowadays, CARL. Credit, audit, risk, and legal. So that's how it was termed at that point in time. And I see a lot of things happening, because of reasons like there are increased scams, there are frauds, the entire trade policy is going digital, balance sheet treatment of trade finance. So there are multiple things that are promoting or pushing the banks to adopt technology and trade together. When we look at the pain points from the bank's perspective, purely bank's perspective, banks look at it like this: that there is a high cost of compliance. Okay, there is manual processing and manual documentation that we are talking about. The digitization still has to, is a journey that is just begun. if you look at the larger spectrum of the banking world, it's not we've just scratched the surface from our digitalization space. The technology players and the large trade finance companies who run the trade finance setups, be it Infosys or TI or Finastras of the world, they are all doing their bit in terms of getting in the best software, getting in the best products to the banks. But adoption is something that is taking time. Operational cost remains high, so that's something where fintechs are also contributing significantly, and banks are kind of integrating with the fintechs to reduce the cost, operational cost, increase efficiency on that side. I would say it's a journey that has begun, and a lot is holding in the future for all of us. When we look at again collectively between bank and the customer, what are the changes these both banks are seeking or the customers are seeking? On the digitization side, digitized processes to reduce manual effort is something that has been sought by everyone, and the entire banking framework or the new age companies or technology companies, everyone is trying to digitize as much processes as possible. When we there was a recent guidelines, or I would say a note from ICC which said that at any given point in time there are around 4 billion A4 sheets circulating in the globe for the entire trade business that is underway. That's like huge paper cost itself, and a marketable the addressable opportunity in front of us in terms of digitizing processes. So that's something that's been taken care, been addressed, being picked up as opportunity by multiple companies across the world in various shapes and forms. There are companies who are doing uh, doc check in a digitized manner. There are companies who are the consortiums being formed by banks, wherein the entire LC process has been automated. Uh, they're getting customers also on board. There are you know such consortiums like Contour and Marco Polo, and recently one has got formed in India called IBBIC for the domestic trade. These are all progressive steps. Banks have come together, and one of the larger aspect that we all see is banks coming together for a common cause, and I think that's itself is a larger thing to look at from the entire ecosystem perspective. The larger aspects on some of these fronts lie in coming is for the community to come together. We're talking about a change which cannot be done by one bank or one set of corporate customers or one geography or one regulator. There are regulators who are working on various kinds of projects, whether it is with respect to anti-money laundering, with respect to KYC, with respect to regulatory, improving the regulatory aspects, digitization of negotiable instruments. A lot of such things, a lot of such initiatives have been taken. But the adoption has to be global. It has to be seamless. It has to be, collective by the larger audience or the banks across the world or regulators across the world together for it to have an impact on the global trade. Right, we look at the improved coordination between banks and facilitators. This is again one of our interest areas, wherein we are also trying to bring the banks and customers together on a common platform. Now, this is something that has been spoken of, being looked at for as a gap we have seen for a very very long time. Unfortunately, no one bank can do this. There has to be a third party who has to come together and get all the banks together on a common platform, and we're making that effort here. Uh, and a lot of other areas which have been spoken of, things like the entire pricing and the commercial terms, more transparency on that side. As we speak of technologies like blockchain and DLT, trust me, there'll be a lot of transparency that will come in. The differential pricing which banks could charge or the financial institutions could levy otherwise up till now, we will see a harmonization on that side, wherein the pricing will get streamlined across the banking framework, and you will be left with those opportunistic cases. One of pricing that will be that opportunities will always be there with the banks, but on a regular day-to-day annuity business, which is what trade is, you will see a standardization of pricing happening across the world. This is the roadmap that has been defined by ICC. I'm just kind of speaking about it. 4 billion documents, in circulation for the entire trade system, heavily dependent on paper. So that is something that's being digitized, and over the next 5 years, we see a lot of information getting digitized, and the flow between the bank and the customer will be all digital. The journey has already begun. We see initiatives by many regulators, by many customers, many banks. It is just the adoption that has to increase across the globe. And as the future stands, we have the entire framework of trade being moved digital, right from origination of the transaction till the time the monies get credited into the beneficiary account, or till the time the goods reach the destination, and entire end-to-end process gets digitized. What we see today is a digital journey which is in bits and pieces. In some countries, you see the entire customs process and KYC process has been digitized. In some countries, you see the banking processes have taken a leap. They are getting digitized. It's the next phase is when they start joining hands and coming together. So then that is the time when we see a complete end-to-end sphere which will be digitized in the format. Uh, the finance cost is something that is, as I mentioned, we'll see a harmonization on the overall cost of trade finance as everyone gets connected on common platforms. And technology adoption is something that can be, I would not say it will be any one specific technology which will make an inroad significantly. There will be multiple technologies that will be used together to address each kind of use case. And technologies will always be dependent on the relevant use cases. We see the multiple aspects of trade finance, wherein we can use blockchain as a technology to kind of augment, to streamline processes, to harmonize things and bring a large significant efficiency in the overall transaction. But there are other technologies also that are being spoken of, and we look at the gap alone. As we see, we look at things like DLT and blockchain have been spoken of, but there is significant play from artificial intelligence. We see a significant play already begun with OCR, wherein documents have been scanned and optically read by the system, by machine, and multiple things are getting generated from there. The entire data collection is happening. Pricing decisions have been taken on that. The document checking under LC is being done on that. So there are already multiple use cases which have been put in place through the overall technology sphere. But in the long run, or I would say to get the best out of all this, the entire spectrum, the adoption spectrum has to increase. As we see some of the players on the trade side, we see the entire trade finance digitization space, and these are all fintechs that we are talking about here. We have multiple such companies, and they represent both trade and supply chain kind of industries. We have Tolia from US, who's doing a phenomenal work on the trade finance on the supply chain side. They partner with JP Morgan locally in US. There's Mitigram, it's a Swedish company. They are doing a lot of work on the trade finance and secondary market side. There is CCRM, who is doing a lot of work out of Singapore on the secondary trade side. No one bank has X number or X amount of limits available. You break it up into smaller parcels and distribute it amongst the larger banking fraternity. Those are the kind of activities they are doing it. And these transactions are done in a very seamless manner. Back to back distribution of assets happen. The entire document, entire process is digitized. We see R3 playing a significant role on the entire blockchain layer itself. Corda has been one of the best enterprise solutions as far as the technology is concerned. We are doing some bit on the entire connectivity space where we're bringing the banks and customers together on a common platform. Finastra has been working extensively on the entire trade finance product development, be it the back end or the client front end. They've done multiple innovations on that side and really improved the overall technology aspect. Um, TradeStream, they've been working extensively on the entire LC process itself, digitizing the LC process itself, getting banks and customers together. Uh, Trade Tech is again bringing banks on both the sides together on the secondary market side. Likewise, multiple such companies who are making their inroads to kind of fill in multiple aspects of trade finance, right from digitization to automation to the gap. There are initiatives like digital negotiable instruments which have been worked upon extensively. It's an initiative taken by ITFA along with a few technology players who are working on the entire DNI initiative. The whole idea is to digitize a negotiable instrument itself. And as it gets digitized, the next process or the next set of activity would be to take it to multiple regulators, multiple legal systems, and get an adoption by those geographies and by those jurisdictions, because that's where the global trade will benefit out of it. Today, if we see two core documents in the entire trade flow, which are still in paper format or are required in paper format, are the draft, the negotiable instrument, the bill of exchanges, as we say, and the bill of lading, which is a transport document. These are the two documents which are the core, I would say, the thick of things right now, where multiple initiatives have been taken to digitize these and increase the adoption rate. Now, I'm increasingly using the word adoption because at the end of the day, global trade is connected. If you look at the larger spectrum, the whole idea is in the international trade, you have people, someone selling goods from Vietnam to US or China to US or India to US and Africa to, someone from Nigeria to India or Nigeria to Bangladesh. The homogeneity of guidelines has to be there on both the ends. That's very critical, and technology is working toward it. I would not say that when the entire piece started off on blockchain side, also it was all in place on day zero. The adoption and the I would say sequencing of events has matured there as well. We have players like Contour today who has gotten 50 odd corporates, 13 odd banks, and they able to move the entire LC process online. They are working on it. It's all about adoption. 50 customers is no, it's not a big number at a global spectrum, but it is a sizable number to look at the adoption as we speak. Yes, the number has to go many-fold, and banks have to play a critical role on that side. Now, when we look at on this screen, when we are looking at a solution, this is more from a blockchain perspective. Essentially, what does blockchain do? It is giving you visibility of all the participants on a particular network at a particular time. You it is not a sequential flow of information. It's a parallel flow of information, and everyone is getting involved and doing their bit of activity on a real time basis, and thus everyone saves time, right? The information do move in a sequential manner wherever it is required to, but what all things can be done parallelly are being done parallelly. And that's the beauty of this technology, that multiple nodes can be connected into a common chain and a common network at one go. uh, I'm trying to kind of not organize it and play it simply from a core understanding perspective. So if you see this module, you have issuance request, LC advising request, information of goods, documentations, validation of goods, notify payment. Everything is happening at a uh, uh, in a network, and it is visible to all the other participants of the chain. So that's about the core technology. And yes, if this is then supported by intelligence on the other side, whether it is artificial or machine learning intelligence, both these will further augment the processing at the back end. Okay, because when you see the node coming in, there is some processing happening at the back end, and there's a lot of data that is getting generated. So right usage of data, what we see as what has been done by, let's say, some of these search engines like Google for individuals. We understand that there is a lot of artificial intelligence that's going in. What we think is what gets populated, because somewhere we have kind of spoken about it, we have typed it, and that is what is getting shown in the researches. I am not saying the trade is on that path already, but it's achieved that path. I would say it is on that path. You will see those kind of things happening as you move ahead. There'll be, on the commodity side, if I were to give an example, you'll get an auto-populated messages. If you are a pulses trader, you will get to see a lot of information coming to you, in an organic manner on pulses on a regular basis. So that's the kind of intelligence that will keep getting generated from you know, the tons of data that trade collects today. I will try and okay, yeah. Pankaj, over to you. Thanks for your patient hearing. I hand over Pankaj to take it ahead from here.
No, thanks, Vikram. It was quite insightful for I hope, hopefully for all of us. So I think in context of US is very, very important that how being one of the major trade player globally, how a trade finance and with the fintech or the automation, it could benefit US banks and US exporters. So it's very interesting to see that US overall contribute 12 to 13% on the export side of the global trade, right? Which is very, very important play. And I think as we move forward, this is very important that the key markets where US exports today, being Mexico being number one, where the trade volumes are to the extent of $200 billion plus, which is of course the closest country where US will export. But if you see the breakup of Vikram, if you can move to the next slide, that the major trade partners, if you see of US as being India, China, Mexico, and how the banks play the key role, right? So this is very, very important that while you see the major trade partners over here, where the trade finance comes into the role and where the letter of credit comes into the role, when the countries like India, Turkey, Indonesia, South Africa, which require letter of credit confirmation. So while yes, there's a shift towards the open account trade, but still when you're exporting to these markets, a letter of credit plays an important role, because initially when you start the trade, it requires some time to build that trust, and to build the trust factor, the banks plays a critical role to issue a letter of credit by an Indian bank or a Turkish bank. And when it comes to Africa, which again are very, very important, that for a lot of people, for a lot of exporters, Africa seems to be a black market. That is not the case as we move forward, right? There's a major trade happening between Nigeria. I know a bank from US which doesn't touch Nigeria at all, but there's a huge trade volume from US to Nigeria, right? To be it to Morocco, be it to Ethiopia, be it to Kenya, be it to Ghana. And this is very important that how a bank, US bank or a larger bank can play a role to secure this trade flow between US to African markets. So while a bank plays its own role, so if you see from a US perspective, who are the key players? You have a Bank of America, Boni, Citi, JP, Wells Fargo. These are the critical players over the last 20 years who have built their franchisee to handle trade flow between US to these markets, intra-Europe, emerging and frontier markets. Today, Citi having branch in 140 countries, they know how Bangladesh work, what is the country risk on Bangladesh, what is the premium, and so on and so forth. But what is the opportunity for us as a finance professional and the banks? While you have these major banks playing a role direct or under a multilateral cover, you have banks like PNC or US or TD Bank who yet to play their role, right, in the trade flow between US and other markets. And as the trade finance play a critical role and the business and volumes grow post pandemic era, where a lot of shifting has happened from China to other markets, there's a huge opportunity for other US banks to play their role. And to easiest start for any US bank, you go under multilateral cover. So today, AFDB from Africa, where Yadu sir also have consulted in past for IFC, where which is where you guys are sitting, the subsidiary of World Bank or Asian Development Bank, gives you an initial cover to cover those markets. So traditionally, the way it happens, when a new bank want to enter to a market, right, likes of AFDBs or IFCs and ADBs come and support you, and then you slowly go on your own. So that is where the opportunity is moving forward. So that's where the technology plays its role. That today, for a PNC bank sitting in US, if I want the access of a US exporter exporting to Nigeria, can I source this transaction through a platform or technology, whether it's us or any other platform, while sitting in US? Citi have its branch in Kenya, but PNC don't have. That's where the platform like us can play a role, where a Caterpillar exporting to Kenya or Nigeria, a PNC or a TD or US bank can get access to that trade flow and confirm the letter of credit for a US exporter, either directly or under IFC cover. So that is where the bridging is happening, and there's an opportunity for more US banks to play their role and platform like us. So that's very, very interesting. As you see move forward, there are a lot of players we've been tracking who are exporting from US to Nigeria. So we know that in Asia, but before I go to the trade flow, this is a very interesting slide, as you want to note. While we at a lot of banks I come across, out of 400 banks which has got balance sheet of $10 billion above, and where they're scared of taking exposure into Sri Lanka or Ethiopia or Kenya or Ghana, IFC supporting almost 40 plus non-investment grade countries. World over, you have 81 non-investment grade countries, which are being rated by Moody, S&P, or the other rating agencies. But likes of IFC, likes of other multilateral play a very, very critical role to support that trade flow. So you as an exporter, you as a bank need not to get scared of touching a Nigeria or a Kenya or Ethiopia or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka trade flow. You have an institution like IFC covering that. You have a large other banks covering that. How you can maximize your trade flow within a bank, or how you can get more orders as a US exporters, you need platform like this, or a shelter of likes of institution like IFC, which is covering close to 50 non-investment grade countries, where they will give you the cover, and a bank with coming with a liquidity will discount those bills. Moving forward, Asia US trade flow, very, very important. That today, if you see, these are the US companies already have their presence in like country like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Cambodia, where they're already taking exposure, where they have feet on the ground. Now, you may think that who may support in these markets, but they're already doing the business. So are you a US company which is looking that, oh, I have an order from Bangladesh or I have an order from Sri Lanka, but who will cover? There are banks who are covering this, and we're happy to see that our customers have been dealing with these US measures and already doing their business under letter of credit, as well as open account in these critical markets. Again, Africa is again a very, very important market. You have an ADM, the largest $40 billion commodity company exporting into Nigeria and Kenya. You have a Cargill, again exporting wheat and other products to Africa. You have a ExxonMobil, doing oil. So there are major projects happening across Africa, and this is being covered by multilateral banks and various trade finance institutions. What it comes in is that, could I add value through a platform like this, where I can enhance the trade of US exporter or a US bank? So how we are playing our role at 360TF. Now, our vision is to, could any letter of credit issued globally by either an importer or exporter, our vision is to connect that with a respective bank through our platform. So be it Nigeria, be it Kenya, be it Ghana, be it Caterpillar, be it Kimberly-Clark, or be it Cargill, so be it ADM, they want to expand their reach into these markets. A platform like us could connect them directly to the bank who's taking exposure. Maybe it could be US Bank, it could be Standard Bank, which is owned by ICBC China, it could be Rabobank from Amsterdam, it could be BNP Paribas from France. because they have handled Ivory Coast in past, being a French this thing. It could be a Portuguese bank which has have ruled a country in Bangladesh. So there are also banks who have historically their countries have ruled these countries in Africa, and they come with that intelligence. So you being sitting in US or somebody being sitting in China may not know that country very well, but there are banks sitting in other countries who come through our platform together and take exposure. So that's where we are leading to connect literally every LC issuer to a right bank, which can enable an exporter to mitigate a risk and help importer to import goods. So this is, been a journey, and we've been helping and a lot of US exporters, and we are also passionate to help new US banks to enter to these markets. Just in conclusion, I want back to Vikram to add on this, and then we move to Q&A. Thank you.
I would just kind of just adding on to this particular aspect. We started off, and Gokul mentioned about the gap that we are looking at between the SMEs and the developed markets and the underdeveloped markets. And we are also working quite extensively with the SME world across geographies. And our whole idea is to, I kind of go back to earlier statements, harmonize and kind of standardize the entire trade practice and the trade flow as much as we can through our offering, and enable the SME world also to get the best of the practices from which are available in the market, so that they are able to increase their global business, increase their franchise, increase their reach out to a larger banking framework across the world. So that's the larger idea. As we look at the industry side, we see that the challenges are, we spoke about it. The core challenges are high turnaround times, pricing. FIs have less exposure in geographical coverage. These are the core reasons why we kind of got into it, and we are addressing all these reasons, all these hurdles from our offering perspective. And what we bring on table is a wider pool of banks today, who are going to connect. We are connecting them to corporates across the world through technology, and there is extensive use of technology on all these fronts. Benefits are definitely, higher efficiency, lesser cost, and increased market reach. So those are the key things that we bring on table. What we are talking about from a framework perspective is, uh, on one side we have the customer, other side we have the bank, and this is just a quick snapshot of what we have on the platform as a journey. A transaction gets placed, it is responded by banks, and codes are improvised and edited by the banks whenever required to bring in the price competitiveness. And once the codes are accepted is when the transaction is done on the platform. So that's like, simply put, as an overview, a lot of back end work on the technology side, but to the client and to the bank, we try to keep it very, very simple. As we come to a closure, we have a small quiz for all of you, and I'll request Pankaj to kind of step in here. Anyone
This
wants
is,
to
yeah.
take this up? Yeah, Pankaj.
Yeah, I'm sure this is very simplest one, but yeah, it would be great if members can participate and maybe answer in the chat box that which country you think where US has got its maximum. I think yes, people have already started responding. Very good. So Vikram, the answer.
It's Mexico.
Yeah, I see one of the member have already replied. So that
Okay.
shows the attention of the members. Yeah.
Let's go ahead. How big is the trade finance gap in the global market in terms of value? Anyone?
I think Mr. Tiwari have answered. Yeah.
Great. So it's $1.5 trillion. What is the major pain point of the banks in trade finance?
Anup has answered. Anup Goyal.
Fantastic. So today banks are worried about the KYC compliances. With that, we thank you again and for your patient listening, and happy to take questions from you, uh, on various aspects, whichever is convenient. We're more than happy to take the questions.
Thank you, Pankaj and Vikram. It was a real 360-degree coverage on trade finance, I guess. Yeah, and we have a question from Srinivasa Gurujada. He's a go-to person in ICAI-DC. So he wrote this: technology solutions go through diverse trajectories of progress. Few are immensely successful and make positive disruptive changes in the society, while most show initial promise and then vanish. What is your advice to finance professionals in identifying likely tech solutions that would be winners and invest efforts in right direction? Would you want to take this, Pankaj or
Yeah.
Vikram?
Yeah, let me go for it. I think the critical point is, of course, the initial user experience and adoption, which also Vikram has spoken earlier. And also, I think the important is who are the team members and the founder behind it to sustain that technology innovation, right? Because any platform today, what WhatsApp was there when it was launched, and what WhatsApp is today with a bot and with a new features, it's a completely transforming, right? So it's very, very important that any technology initiative to sustain and to keep innovating is the technology enhancement. And I think most critical point is, I think the people behind it, being the investor and the founders who come with that background of being bringing creativity, innovation, and sustain is the progress. I think that is the most critical one, because technology will keep changing. What is there today in the shelf will not be there next year. But who are the people behind is most critical point for any technology innovation or any tech company globally.
I'll just add on to this, and thanks to Srinivas to asking this question. I'm sure this is one aspect that a lot of professionals kind of go through. I'll give you an example of this particular position,
Vikram,
and then
can you
we
please
see
be a
where
little louder?
what
Your
is the
voice is
trouble
feeble.
that we have done.
Vikram,
Sorry, am I audible? Okay, I'm sorry.
louder.
Yeah, I'll be louder. I'll be louder. Srinivas, I'll give you an example of the online LC process. Okay. And in the banking world, one of the initial advancement on this side was made, I will not name the bank, let's keep it like that. It was in the year 2007, 2008, right? And trust me, on the trade side of world, this was a big thing. We all feared, and it was not my bank. We all feared that the entire LC flows will move to this particular bank. It is a big thing for the clients. Unfortunately, or to the surprise of all of us, okay, after 10 years, in 2017, they kind of they struggled with it for 10 years, and they never went beyond a single digit flow of the LCs through the online platform. Now adoption was a big issue. What went wrong is something that they then kind of went deep into it and understood that the entire solution was made from a perspective, from the bank's perspective, to ease out bank's process, and the maker level job was getting pushed to the customer, which customer did not accept, right? Then the next level of indulgence came in. Banks went a step back, worked with the ERP players to get the entire LC format done in the ERP world itself. Or by then, the ERP players had already started adopting to it. And the today, what you see is the LC flows from the ERP itself through the corporate and the banks are integrated today to the bank's system, and the maker level job has kind of completely vanished from the entire process. So that's a big advancement. But yes, the thought process was right to digitize the entire process. the way they went about it in the initial phase probably was not the best of the ways to do it. But yes, the industry learned, changed, adopted a new practice, and went ahead with the improvised version. And we see larger adoption today, significantly larger adoption today. Having said that, uh, it is difficult to say at times what technology will work, what will not. But what is important is to move ahead on the technology front and keep improvising. What Pankaj gave an example, WhatsApp today and WhatsApp probably 5 years back was completely different. Today we can do n number of things. That's an adoption, right? That's something that has to be done on all technological fronts, as we say. So thanks for
Yeah.
that question. Yeah, Pratyusha.
Yeah. Thank you, Vikram. So we have another question from Koteshwar Rao. Through the advancement of e-commerce, would the importance of middlemen be greatly reduced or may slowly disappear as many trade finance dealers in Hong Kong, Dubai are being affected? Appreciate your comments or remarks, please.
Can you repeat the question again, Pratyusha?
Sure. Through the advancement of e-commerce, would the importance of middlemen be gradually reduced or may slowly disappear as many trade finance dealers in Hong Kong, Dubai are being affected? Appreciate your comments.
So one thing is, yes, it is the case where today Amazon can buy directly from the producer or the supplier, right? But the critical role which is still being played by a lot of traders is the financing. Today, if you see, the trader is only adding value on two things: the sourcing, identifying the right producer, and the financing. What happened today, a producer in Africa or a producer of, let's say, cashew nut in Ghana or Ivory Coast or a coffee, he don't have direct reach to the buyer. Second, the trader in between finance the trade flow, right? So that's where they bring their own balance sheet to finance that transaction. Yes, at some point of time, the e-commerce and the major giants like Amazon will start buying directly from this, and of course, Amazon Sambhav have launched this in India, and they are also funding these SMEs. So yes, there will be sort of a disruption, but still for large commodities and the bulk, whether it's rice, sugar, fertilizer, oil, the large capital machinery, still trade finance and the trader will play a big role versus a retail. So I will put it this way: yes, there will be a disruption for a trader for a retail produce and a retail reach, but for a large bulk, let's say soft agriculture commodities and capital machinery, trader will still play an important role. Vikram, you want to add on something to it further?
I can kind of agree with you on that side. Disruption is part of the order of the day, but we need to keep working towards it and kind of improvising our side of things and see how do we continue to value add. The position one had taken as a middleman or as a trader is something that is being questioned, being challenged, being threatened. We have to continuously add value in terms of our offering is the way to survive. That's the way I see some of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. We have another question. What is the IT security in case of digitization coming up as LC online or through virtual currencies? Would you like to take that, please?
I'll go for it. See, the world, while we say that online LCs and online transactions, the communication is between the corporate and the bank. The way it was done in the physical world, it has only become better in terms of restricting the entities or the individuals or the parties who can access this information. It's a direct flow of information from the corporate to the banking channel. To that extent, the data is secured, and we have to trust the banks for the kind of data security practices they follow. So to that extent, I would say we need not worry about the data security aspects with respect to online banking or online LCs. Now, the second part of the question, sorry, Pratyusha, the second aspect was IP securities. No, I'm not told.
So the question goes as LC online or through virtual currencies?
Virtual currencies, my bad. Sorry.
Yes.
Now, the virtual currencies is something, it's again, we all have to see the way it is getting adopted. The regulatory aspects of, the way regulators view it across geographies is something that we'll have to wait and watch. But the good part with all this is if we are able to see an environment wherein virtual currencies can be put to use, it will definitely ease out lot of aspects on the entire processing front, and it will be significantly beneficial for the entire global trade is the way I see it. It will reduce greatly reduce money laundering issues, multiple aspects. The virtual currency has multiple benefits. Yes, it has challenges with respect to, again, this is something that will harmonize or bring the world, make the world common. What the difference what we see today between developed markets and undeveloped markets, you will be then offering a single product across geographies. So that to that extent, harmonization will happen. So we'll all have to wait and watch how do these things transform. Again, something to watch out for is virtual currencies.
If I may, I can only add, that
Yeah, please, sir.
we are
Go,
looking,
go the
yeah, I can only add that we are looking at commodities that on high sea sales, the whole ecosystem needs to factor in, let's say for oil. Now, oil, when it moves from the Gulf, from Hormuz, it goes to, let's say, Houston, an oil tanker carrying crude, it takes about 20 days, but it changes hands maybe 200 times. So oil, so high sea sales is happening at a furious pace. And those are all, the underlying documents validity is something that the digital world will quickly create those digital documents. And that's when the trading will become even quicker and faster. So I think we are moving into new realms of trade finance, which we never thought of before.
Thank you for pitching in, Mathur, sir. I think we have Divya Chandra raised hand. Are you here, Divya? Would you like to ask a question, please?
I think she's lost.
Yes, I think she's not there.
I can see her. I think she is there on the screen, but I'm not sure her voice is, she's muted. I can see on the screen.
Okay, Gokul, can you give her access?
I have
to
given.
speak?
I have given
Okay.
that.
Okay. Divya, would you like to ask a question, please?
Maybe before, by the time Divya joins, I just wanted to answer one of the questions which has come through your team yesterday from the members who have registered.
There is
whether
one
the
question in the chat box. Sorry to interrupt the audience. Is standby letter of credit discounting also covered under the platform? Maybe you want to answer that. It's specific to your platform.
Okay, so there are two, if you see the trade finance expect very quickly, since Divya have raised this question, that one is a simple letter of credit where you're exporting goods particular to a particular order and transaction, and you receive a letter of credit which require confirmation and discounting. Sometimes you're only looking for a confirmation, you don't want to discount the documents. So that's confirmation. Then you have confirmation and discounting. Now there are two types of SBLCs. One is a SBLC to finance the overall, it's an instrument to use funding against your local bank. So I am a Bangladeshi exporter. I'm exporting to Zara, JCPenney, American Eagles, Mark and Spencer, and so on and so forth. I have those export receivables, and I am right now paying local Taka loan of 10 or 11% in Bangladesh. So instead of I go and pay 8 to 10% or 11% to a Bangladeshi bank, I could go to my local bank, say Eastern Bank or a mutual trust bank, which is funded by Norges Fund from Norway, a strong balance sheet, that you give me SBLC. And because anyway I have export receivables from the majors, whether it's Zara's or JCPenney's, I go and ask for a SBLC from my bank against my future export receivable. And then this SBLC issued by a Bangladeshi bank, I go and discount. Yes, that is, can be done through our platform where the client will come and put in the SBLC. The difference is, so this is one aspect. Yes, it is possible, but it takes it time because no bank in the world discount the SBLC like a simple trade finance LC, which take 24 hours to quote. In case of SBLC, there will be also KYC being done on the obligor in Bangladesh. So there will be a different turnaround time, but yes, this is possible on the platform. We have a banks who have appetite for a SBLC backed transaction. So this is one part. But there's another example of SBLC backed funding where I give this SBLC to Siemens or Samsung or LG for a continuous import on a regular basis, where basically it's like a guarantee where I'm securing my supplier on a regular shipment during course of a period of time. That's a moving purchases happening under a one SBLC instrument, which generally is not discountable. It is more from a perspective of given a guarantee to secure to the supply. And this is being used by, so I give an example of a company like Redington, which is listed in India, gives a SBLC to a Apple or a Samsung or a Dell, right? Now, Apple, Samsung, and Dell don't discount this SBLC, but they ensure that, okay, whatever I'm supplying to Redington, which further supplying to a small supermarket, secure. Now, that this SBLC require only confirmation, so that as Apple and Samsung and Dell, I'm secure. So there are two types of product, SBLC to discount and bring working capital against your future export cash flows. I give an example of use case in Bangladesh possible. And the second use case could be a major, let's say IT company supplying to a likes of Redingtons or a Amitech in UAE, which just require confirmation. But yes, as a product feature, it is there on the platform.
Thank you, Pankaj. I hope that answers your question, Priyanka Gupta. So I think that's all for now with the questions.
I have one question, Pratyusha,
Okay.
if everything is okay.
Kalpesh.
Yes, Pankaj, I just want to understand, like probably what are this LCs are also on trade of products or also something like working capital, or does it take a shape of a revolving LCs? How does that particular be different from the type of LCs what you are describing here?
So Kalpesh bhai, in fact, the revolving LC you just mentioned is something very similar to, I give an example of HP, Dell and Samsung, which could be either SBLC or a revolving LC, where there could be a continuous supply under the revolving LC to a buyer on a monthly, on a weekly or a quarterly basis. So if you, so to keep it very simple, if I am importing a, if I'm importing a capital machinery from Caterpillar from US, that's a simple letter of credit which may require a confirmation, but that's not a revolving LC. Revolving LC is actually generally used by the distributors, where there's a product being supplied on a regular basis versus a one-off shipment or one-off purchase of a capital machinery, where we generally use a normal letter of credit which require confirmation.
So what I'm asking you further to this, like if there is a sort of, for example, hypothetically, I have a client who is a very big mining client and he has like a lease of a mining place, you know, he keeps on mining. Now he doesn't need money for purchasing anything, but he just needs to do all the excavations and all that. Now, in that case, he requires a working capital which is enduring and it's probably for a longer period. So how does that LC work for a particular client of this type of, where they are probably doing more of a service oriented, like excavation or being supplying those particular mining ore, which has then they export it or whatever they do that.
Sure, understood. So there are two type of option here. If it's a pure working capital requirement, it won't work, and the LC solution may not come over here, because the way it work, Kalpesh bhai, is if if you are a service provider for doing this mining and you're doing this project for this, if the mining owner is giving you letter of credit for this service, so it could be a mining or it could be a software supply where Infosys is doing a software solution for a bank, even for a software solution or a service which is being rendered by a technology company, a corporate or a bank itself can give a letter of credit to secure to that service provider, and based on the performance of that service provider, the LC can be discounted. So if I'm doing a software project or I'm doing a mining project and the LC is, let's say, for $1 million, and this month I have performed to the tune of $100 million, I will present the document and I can negotiate the document for $100,000. So even for a service industry, you can use letter of credit for discounting, and even it's been used by bank themselves, providing to a LC to a Wipro or a Infosys for that matter. Having said that, if this is a, let's say, a service industry which is working especially for mining, and they have got this project for mining and they need a working capital without the other party providing them the LC, then it becomes sort of a pre-shipment which needs to be arranged by their own bank, not otherwise again the letter of credit. Yeah. So if I'm getting this project from a mining owner, I need to go to my own bank on my own credentials that give me a working capital where I can deploy my resources and the machinery and so on and so forth. So that's come particularly a pre-shipment.
Guys, in the interest of time, we are moving to one last question. Do we cover discrepancies, resolutions, DAN over portal 2? Can you quickly answer that, Pankaj? We can wrap up the session faster.
Sure.
We have
so,
starting up.
Sorry,
so very quickly, our platform have both the features. One is basically we are connecting to importers and exporters for getting a right bank for the confirmation and discounting across the globe, which will be 100 banks in year one and going up to 400 banks, this thing. When it comes to anything on the documentation, we have a West product, which is value-added services, where if you want a draft LC from basic services provider, where you want how I can minimize discrepancies, how well I can draft a LC or draft the clauses in the LC that I minimize discrepancy. So we have all feature of all sort of value-added services, from drafting LC, putting the right clause, to manage end-to-end transaction, negotiating the document, training the team. We have a former chairman of ICC coming in from various ICC chairmen coming on our platform for providing web. So I give this as example as a platform solution. We are when you come to a subscription for a pricing, you are taking a Go Indigo ticket where I can get the subscription to find a bank. But now you need a water bottle, or you need a first row, or you need a window seat, or you need a dinner or a lunch. There's an extra charge, but whatever service you want across letter of credit, from the time letter of credit to be drafted till you get paid, all sort of stack is available at our platform.
I would just add to that, it is the entire trade finance layer that we are building the services on, and not just one aspect of trade finance, but a larger spectrum as we move ahead. We are working on modules like reducing the cost of the transaction, the fee that the banks charge, the correspondent banking charges, reduction on that. How do you work on various structures under the transaction? What Kalpesh bhai mentioned, back-to-back LCs, revolving LCs. So those kind of features you will keep seeing as we move ahead.
I see a lot of interest coming down from the audience. Like, if you have any questions, you're free to reach out to Pankaj Mundra or Vikram Lodha. They've shared their contact details. Please feel free to reach them. And we'll quickly move on to Melanie for word of thanks. Guys, it was a very engaging session. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. As we come towards the end of this webinar, I would like to thank Mr. Yadavinder Mathurji for gracing this event with your presence. You are a true pioneer for AI, tech, startups, and finance, and we greatly appreciate your time and the message that you shared. I would also like to thank CA Pankaj Mundra ji and Mr. Vikram Lodha ji for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. I think we have all gained insights on the significant impact technology is going to have on global trade finance and how that is going to be advantageous for businesses and banks. For those who have missed attending, we will be adding the webinar to our ICI-DC YouTube channel. Please feel free to get in touch with the speakers for any further questions or more information. They have shared their contact details. And we are constantly planning and striving to bring to you the most relevant webinars. So stay updated and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find us as ICI-DC. You can also visit our website, www.icidc.org for more information. And if there's any topic you would like to present on and share your knowledge, please feel free to reach us on admin@icidc.org. Pratyusha also earlier shared the events happening currently, so please go check it out. I've added the links in the chat box as well. And thank you to all the members for joining us today and being online. For feedback, do email us on admin@icidc. You will also receive a 2-hour CPE credit. And I think we have people joining us from 3 different time zones. So without further delay, I'm going to conclude this session. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
See you earlier. Mathur Sab and everyone. See you earlier.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.